In 1542, a Spanish conquistador named Francisco de Orellana became the first European to navigate the entire length of the Amazon River. He was searching for El Dorado, the legendary city of gold. He never found it, but he found something that should have changed the world far more than gold ever could. In his journals, Orellana described vast cities along the riverbanks, populations numbering in the millions, farmland stretching as far as he could see. He wrote of roads connecting settlements, of organized societies, of agricultural abundance that rivaled anything in Europe. His reports were dismissed as fantasy. When later explorers traveled the same route, they found nothing. No cities, no millions of people, no farmland. Just endless jungle and scattered tribes numbering in the hundreds. For 450 years, historians called Orellana a liar. The Amazon, they insisted, could never support large populations. The soil was too poor, the jungle too hostile. Dense civilization in the rainforest was biologically impossible. Then in 1966, a Dutch soil scientist named Wim Sombroek was conducting routine surveys in the Brazilian Amazon. He pushed his sampling tool into the earth near the city of Santarém. What came up made no sense. The soil was black, not the thin gray clay that covers most of the Amazon. Deep, rich, black soil extending down several feet. Soil that laboratory analysis would later confirm was among the most fertile on Earth. Sombroek had discovered Terra Preta, dark earth, the black soil of the Amazon. And with that discovery, Francisco de Orellana was finally proven right. The cities had existed. The millions of people had existed. The agricultural abundance had existed. European diseases arriving before European explorers had wiped out 90% of the population. The jungle had swallowed the evidence, but the soil remained. Soil so fertile that it still grows crops today without any fertilizer, 500 years after the civilization that created it vanished. Soil that modern science cannot fully explain. Soil that regenerates itself. Soil that the $200 billion fertilizer industry has worked very hard to ensure you never learn about. Today we are opening the file on the greatest agricultural secret ever buried. The soil that makes fertilizer obsolete. The technology that ancient Americans perfected and modern Americans forgot. And the reason why the industry that sells you bags of chemicals every year has made sure this knowledge stayed lost. If this matters to you, subscribe and hit the bell. The vault is open. The Amazon rainforest covers 2.7 million square miles. It is the largest tropical forest on Earth, and almost all of it sits on soil so poor that farming should be impossible. This is the paradox that confused scientists for centuries. The jungle appears lush and abundant. Trees tower 200 feet. Vegetation is so dense that sunlight never reaches the ground. Surely, scientists assumed this abundance must grow from rich soil. The opposite is true. Amazonian soil is among the poorest on Earth. The thin layer of topsoil, rarely more than a few inches deep, sits atop clay and sand that contain almost no nutrients. The apparent abundance of the rainforest is an illusion, a closed loop where nutrients cycle between living plants and decomposing matter without ever entering the soil. Cut down the forest, and the illusion collapses. Within 3 years of clearing, the soil becomes essentially sterile. This is why slash and burn agriculture fails so spectacularly in the Amazon. This is why modern farms established on cleared rainforest land require massive fertilizer inputs just to survive. The indigenous people who lived in the Amazon 2,000 years ago faced this same problem. The soil could not support agriculture, the jungle could not be farmed. So they did something that modern science is only beginning to understand. They manufactured their own soil. Terra Preta is not natural, it is engineered, created by humans using technology that we are still working to reverse engineer. The process begins with charcoal, not ash. When you burn organic matter in a low oxygen environment, you get charcoal. Charcoal is stable, porous, and remains in soil for thousands of years. It does not provide nutrients directly. It does something far more valuable. Charcoal creates habitat. Under a microscope, charcoal reveals a structure of microscopic pores and channels. These spaces become home to bacteria, fungi, and other microorganisms that drive soil fertility. The charcoal itself is nearly pure carbon, resistant to decomposition, but the life that colonizes it transforms everything around it. The ancient Amazonians understood this. They created charcoal through a process called pyrolysis, burning organic waste in smoldering pits that limited oxygen. They mixed the charcoal with food scraps, human waste, broken pottery, fish bones, and animal remains. They added this mixture to their fields year after year, generation after generation. The result was Terra Preta, soil so dark it looks artificial, soil that extends several feet deep in some locations, soil that contains 70 times more carbon than surrounding jungle earth, and soil that is still fertile today, 2,000 years after the last person added anything to it. This is the fact that should have revolutionized agriculture. Terra Preta does not deplete, it regenerates. In 2006, researchers from Cornell University established test plots on Terra Preta sites in Brazil. They grew crops without adding any fertilizer. They compared yields to adjacent plots of normal Amazonian soil that received standard fertilizer applications. The Terra Preta plots outperformed the fertilized plots, without any inputs, using soil that had not been actively managed for 500 years. The research team was led by Dr. Johannes Lehmann, a soil scientist who has spent his career studying what the ancient Amazonians discovered. The secret, Lehmann found, is biological. Normal soil is a passive medium. Plants extract nutrients until the nutrients are gone. Farmers must replace them through fertilization. The cycle never ends. The dependency never breaks. Terra Preta is an active ecosystem. The charcoal substrate supports microbial communities that capture nutrients from the air, from rainwater, from decomposing organic matter. These nutrients are held in the soil rather than washing away. The system builds fertility rather than depleting it. But here's what makes Terra Preta truly remarkable. It grows. Farmers near Santarém have been mining Terra Preta for decades. They dig it up, bag it, and sell it as premium planting mix. Scientists expected the deposits to shrink. They expanded. The biological processes that the ancient Amazonians triggered 2,000 years ago are still operating. The soil is still building itself. Nutrients are still accumulating. Fertility is still increasing. Local farmers discovered something else. If they spread a layer of Terra Preta over normal clay soil and waited, the normal soil began transforming. The biology migrated. The darkness spread. Poor soil became rich soil infected by the living system the ancients had created. Terra Preta is not just soil, it is a technology, a self-replicating, self-improving, permanent solution to agricultural fertility. And the fertilizer industry has known about it for decades. The Haber-Bosch process, invented in 1909, allowed industrial production of synthetic nitrogen fertilizer. For the first time in history, farmers could purchase fertility in bags. The process won its inventors Nobel Prizes. It enabled the green revolution that tripled global food production. It is credited with supporting the population growth that brought humanity from 1.6 billion in 1900 to 8 billion today. It also created a $200 billion annual industry. That industry depends on one thing: farmers who must buy fertilizer every year. The entire business model requires that soil fertility be temporary, that fields must be replenished, that the cycle of purchase and application never ends. Terra Preta breaks that model. Soil that regenerates itself does not need purchased inputs. Farmers who create Terra Preta stop being customers. A technology that makes fertilizer obsolete threatens an industry worth hundreds of billions of dollars. The scientific research on Terra Preta began in earnest in the 1980s. Papers were published in academic journals. Conferences were held. The potential was discussed among specialists. But somehow the information never reached mainstream agriculture. Extension services did not promote it. Agricultural schools did not teach it. Government agencies did not fund large-scale implementation research. The knowledge remained confined to academic circles while farmers continued buying fertilizer. This is not conspiracy in the sense of secret meetings and explicit agreements. It is something simpler and more effective. Research funding flows toward problems that industries want solved. Fertilizer companies fund research on more efficient fertilizer application. They do not fund research on eliminating fertilizer entirely. Agricultural policy is shaped by lobbyists. The fertilizer industry spends millions on lobbying every year. Terra Preta has no lobby. Ancient Amazonians do not make campaign contributions. The information exists. The science is published. But the infrastructure that would turn knowledge into practice is missing because no one with money benefits from building it. Meanwhile, the cost of ignorance grows. The synthetic nitrogen that farmers apply to fields does not stay there. Roughly half washes away into groundwater and rivers. It flows downstream into oceans, where it feeds algae blooms that consume oxygen and create dead zones. The dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico, where the Mississippi River meets the sea, covers 6,000 to 7,000 square miles every summer. Almost nothing can live there. The nitrogen that was supposed to grow corn in Iowa instead kills everything in Louisiana. This is the true cost of the fertilizer model. Not just the money farmers spend, but the ecosystems destroyed downstream. Terra Preta has no downstream cost. The nutrients stay where they are put. The biology holds them in place. The system closes the loop that industrial agriculture has broken. The creation of Terra Preta is not a mystery. Scientists have worked out the essential process. You can do it yourself. The modern term is biochar. Biochar is charcoal created specifically for soil application. The pyrolysis process is the same one the ancient Amazonians used, just refined with modern understanding. You can make biochar from any woody organic material: branches, prunings, wood chips, corn stalks, coconut shells. The material is heated in a low oxygen environment until it converts to nearly pure carbon. Commercial biochar kilns exist for every scale: backyard units that process brush piles, farm-scale systems that handle agricultural waste, industrial facilities that can convert thousands of tons. The char must be charged before application. Raw biochar is biologically empty. It must be colonized by the microorganisms that drive fertility. The ancient Amazonians charged their char by mixing it with nutrient-rich organic waste. Human waste, food scraps, fish bones, broken pottery that retained traces of food. They created a microbial inoculum that colonized the char as it was incorporated into soil. Modern methods are similar. Biochar is mixed with compost, with manure, with worm castings. It is soaked in compost tea or fish emulsion. Any source of active biology can charge the char. Once charged, biochar is incorporated into soil. The biology takes over. The system begins building itself. The results are not immediate. Terra Preta took generations to develop its full potential. Modern biochar applications show similar patterns. Soil fertility improves incrementally year after year. The full benefits emerge over decades, but those benefits are permanent. A field amended with biochar does not require repeat applications. The carbon stays in place for thousands of years. The biological system, once established, maintains itself. Farmers who adopt biochar face a transition period. The first few years may show modest results. The temptation to return to synthetic fertilizer is strong, but farmers who persist report soil that improves every year, crops that grow better with each season, water retention that increases until irrigation needs drop by half or more, fertility that compounds rather than depletes. They also report something else: independence. The farmer who creates Terra Preta no longer needs the fertilizer industry. The power relationship shifts. The annual purchase cycle ends. The vulnerability to price increases and supply disruptions disappears. This independence is precisely what the industry fears. The fertilizer market is dominated by a handful of multinational corporations. They have spent a century building distribution networks, lobbying infrastructure, and consumer dependency. A technology that makes their product unnecessary is not a business opportunity. It is an existential threat. The evidence of suppression is circumstantial but consistent. In 2009, the International Biochar Initiative formed to promote research and adoption. Their efforts have been chronically underfunded despite clear scientific merit. Major agricultural foundations, many of which receive funding from fertilizer corporations, have shown little interest. Government programs that subsidize fertilizer use provide no comparable support for biochar adoption. Farmers receive payments to buy synthetic inputs, but nothing to create permanent fertility. Agricultural extension services, which shape farmer practices across the developing world, rarely mention biochar. The training materials focus on conventional approaches that maintain the purchase cycle. The pattern is consistent with industries protecting market share. No secret conspiracy is required, just the normal operation of economic self-interest. The tragedy is not just economic, it is ecological. Climate change is driven by excess carbon in the atmosphere. Carbon that we released by burning fossil fuels, carbon that we released by destroying forests. Carbon that we release through agricultural practices that exhaust soil organic matter. Terra Preta reverses this flow. The charcoal in Terra Preta is carbon that has been locked away from the atmosphere. Carbon that will remain stable for thousands of years. Every ton of biochar incorporated into soil represents several tons of CO2 removed from the climate system. If biochar were adopted globally, the carbon sequestration potential would be enormous. Estimates range from 1 billion to 4 billion tons of CO2 equivalent removed annually, representing a significant fraction of global emissions. This is not speculative technology requiring decades of development. This is ancient technology, proven over millennia, available for implementation today. Yet climate conferences focus on carbon capture technologies that do not yet exist at scale. They debate carbon trading mechanisms of uncertain effectiveness. They ignore the solution that ancient Amazonians perfected 2,000 years ago. Francisco de Orellana saw the results of Terra Preta in 1542. He saw cities that should not have existed, populations that should not have been possible, agricultural abundance that contradicted everything Europeans believed about tropical soil. Disease killed the people, jungle consumed the cities. But the soil remained. 500 years later, that soil is still fertile, still growing crops without fertilizer, still teaching us what we refuse to learn. The ancient Amazonians did not have soil science. They did not have chemistry degrees or government research grants. They had observation, experimentation, and time. They noticed that some soils stayed fertile while others exhausted quickly. They investigated the difference. They identified the role of charcoal. They developed the process of charging and incorporation. And they built a civilization on soil they created themselves. We have all of their knowledge, plus 500 years of additional science. We have industrial capacity they could not imagine. We have global communication that could spread the technique worldwide in months. What we lack is will. The will to threaten a $200 billion industry. The will to abandon the model of purchased fertility. The will to invest in solutions that cannot be controlled by corporations or measured in quarterly profits. Terra Preta is waiting. It waits in the Amazon, still fertile after 2,000 years. It waits in the research papers that document its potential. It waits in the biochar kilns that can recreate it anywhere on Earth. It waits for farmers who are tired of buying fertility in bags, for gardeners who want soil that improves rather than depletes, for anyone willing to learn what ancient Americans knew. The soil that replaces all fertilizer exists. The technology that makes it exists. The knowledge that would transform agriculture exists. The only question is whether you will use it. If this video helped you, subscribe and hit the bell. Every like and share preserves what they tried to erase. The next video opens soon.